Hi there, how's it going? Or wie geht's, as the Germans say. I hope all is well. When I moved to Germany, there were many new things that I had to adjust to. I already had some insights into German culture before I came, so that definitely helped me to adapt to life in a new country. But still, there's a big difference between visiting a place and actually living in it. So, in an effort to help those of you who are considering a move to Germany, or those who recently arrived, I want to demystify some of the differences that can affect your day to day life here. Hopefully, this will make the transition a little easier for you than it was for me. I've already talked about some of the differences between life in Germany versus the US in many of my videos, but there's definitely more to explore. So, in this video, we're going to look at some other ways that life is different in Germany. Los geht's. Let's start with shopping. You may be thinking, shopping? How can that be any different? Well, first of all, let's talk about prices. You see, here, the prices at the store are the actual prices you'll pay. What do I mean? Well, let's say you go to a store in the US and you pick up a t-shirt, for example, and the price on the tag says $20. When you go to the checkout, the price you actually pay is $21.20. This is totally normal in the US because everyone there expects there will be some sales tax added on to every purchase. In Germany, this would seem both crazy and confusing since the sales tax here is already included in the price. If the tag says 20 euros, the price you pay is just 20 euros. In my view, the best part of this is knowing exactly what the cost of everything is. Another difference when it comes to shopping is the sizing of clothes. Now, I have to admit, even after living in Germany for 5 years, this still confuses me. In fact, I still have to look up my shoe size before I go out to get a new pair of shoes just to be sure. Here, it's all about the metric system. You probably already know that the measurements used here are not the same as in the US. But let's explore some ways this actually plays out in day-to-day life in Germany. Though first, let me just say, there are 3 countries in the entire world that are not on the metric system: Myanmar, Liberia, and you guessed it, the US. Anyways, in case it's helpful, here are some quick conversions for clothing sizes in Germany. So don't freak out when the store employee here asks you if your shoe size is 45. That's just the equivalent of size 11.5 in the US. Okay, now let's talk about store hours. In the US, you're probably used to stores being open on Sundays and having extended hours. This is definitely not the case in Germany. Here, most retail stores close at 8 p.m., and they are all closed on Sundays. On the other hand, many restaurants are open pretty late and on Sundays, especially in big cities. An exception that I recently found was in Bremen, where many restaurants and retail shops were also closed on Mondays. So, it really does seem to depend on the size of the city. Another thing that might seem strange to Americans here is that some retail stores also have shorter hours on Saturday. I have to admit that this seems counterintuitive to me, since Saturday is the day people have the most time for shopping. But that's just how it is. The profit motive here simply isn't as strong as it is in the US. Oh, and another thing to look out for is that retail stores here often close on holidays. And of course, the type and timing of public holidays here varies a bit from those in the US. Sometimes, depending on when a particular holiday falls, stores will remain closed for 1 or 2 extra days too. So be sure to check store hours ahead of time just in case. Okay, now let's move on to driving. I already spoke in another video about how the freeway, or Autobahn, is different here. So I'm not going to go over that again today. Suffice it to say that no, you can't drive as fast as you want on all of the freeways here, but you can on some of them. Speaking of speed limits on the roads here, these are also metric. So let's say, for example, you see a sign that says 100. That doesn't mean that you can go 100 miles an hour. It means that the speed limit is 100 kilometers per hour, which translates to about 60 miles per hour. Distances, of course, are also in metric. This sign means that Köln or Cologne is 106 kilometers away, or about 65 miles. One upside that makes conversions a bit easier is that everything in the metric system is based on 10. And to convert distance from the US system to metric, you'll need to know that 1 kilometer is equivalent to 0.6214 miles. When it comes to meters, just remember that 1 meter is roughly 3 feet. Knowing this really helps me to guesstimate lengths. Another small but interesting difference that I've come across in terms of driving here is a little device that you may have seen in your rental car, or sometimes you'll see it sitting on people's dashboards. This is a parking disc or Parkscheibe. If you own a car here and you don't already have one of these, you should definitely get one. When you're parking, you may see a sign like this, which means you can park in that area for free for 2 hours or 2 Stunden. Then you can park your car, set your parking disc to your arrival time, and just place it on the dashboard. Of course, be sure to move your car before time runs out, or you may get a parking ticket. It's generally pretty easy to get around cities in Germany without a car. The public transit networks are well developed here, but there are some differences to be aware of with public transit in Germany. First of all, let's talk about time. As you can see on this arrival and departure board in Berlin's main train station, or Hauptbahnhof, it says 15:56 in the upper left-hand corner with a little clock icon next to it. So yeah, this is the time. But what does that actually mean? Well, Germany uses a 24-hour clock, so 15:56 is 3:56 p.m. For any time after noon, you just need to subtract 12 from the number. This one takes some getting used to. What's funny is that many Germans, especially in Berlin, will use the US system when speaking, but they leave out the AM and PM part. So unless it's obvious what time someone here is talking about, you might just want to double check to be clear whether they mean morning or evening. Dates here are also handled a little differently than in the US. This becomes really important when planning meetings or trip reservations to be sure that your ticket has the correct date. For example, this ticket says gültig von 010622 and gültig bis 300622. This just means that the ticket is valid from June 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2022. As you can see, the date is shown in a different order than in the US. Here, it's day, followed by month, and then year. This too can take some getting used to, so look out for that one. Okay, now let's talk about something that's often a topic of small talk here in Germany, just like in the US. And that's the weather. First, the temperatures here are different because of, wait for it, the metric system. Here, 0 degrees Celsius is the freezing point of water, and 100 degrees Celsius is the boiling point. But again, like with many things that I've already mentioned in this video, this one may take some getting used to. For example, when they say on the news here that the high is going to be 21 degrees, there's no need to go and grab your gloves and hat, because this means it's actually going to be a lovely 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Before moving on, I also want to touch on differences in weather reporting here. In the US, there's an entire channel dedicated to the weather, the aptly named Weather Channel. This channel has highly detailed local and national weather reports. Local news in the US also usually includes very detailed weather reports. Germany is a little different. Here, we also have weather apps that provide the usual information, but when I first moved here, I was really surprised by how vague and general the weather reports on German news programs are. They do have dedicated weather reporters, but their reports often include weather maps that look like this. To me, this just seems like fairly useless information. If they would simply add some city names, I think it would be a lot more useful. But As it stands, even here in Berlin, watching weather reports on the news appears to be a waste of time. Maybe knowing the exact temperature just isn't as important to people here, though I definitely do hear Germans talking about the weather a lot in casual conversation. Please feel free to share your thoughts or insights on this in the comments. So the last thing I want to talk about today are some differences with the main methods of communication used in Germany. I've talked about how most Germans prefer to make phone calls instead of sending emails in some of my other videos. But I haven't mentioned another difference. Even though many Germans seem to prefer calls, they don't really use voicemail. Usually, when you call a doctor's office, when they're closed or really busy, you'll get a message that just says that no one's available to answer and that you should call back. I found that leaving a message is generally not even an option here. And another thing, if you send an email to a business here, you might receive a call or, strangely, an email that asks you to call them back. This often happens, for example, if you need to make an appointment. So it seems that many people here prefer making appointments by phone instead of email. Also, there's another little difference when it comes to communication, and that's phone numbers. I have to say, this was a big area of confusion for me at first. In the US, people are not at all used to calling international numbers. Living in Germany, you're going to learn all about international numbers. And it's a little complicated. Local numbers here have an area code which is 3 to 4 digits long, and then a subscriber number which is 7 to 8 digits long. My phone number, for example, is 12 digits long. My US phone numbers were always 10 digits long, and for me, 10 digits was much easier to remember. Nowadays, with smartphones, this doesn't really matter so much, but after 5 years, I still haven't memorized my phone number here. Yet somehow, I still remember all of my old US phone numbers. Anyways, on top of all of that, there's a country code that you need to know if you're giving your number to someone outside of Germany. The country code here is +49. And if you're using the country code, you'll also have to drop the 0 at the beginning of your number. This is all a bit different from the way the US numbers work for sure. Well, there you have it. More areas of difference between the US and Germany. As always, I hope this information was useful. If you have anything to add or share on this topic, please let me know in the comments. And be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Tschüss, bis später!